You're listening to the Fantasy Wildcard Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show. Yes, we're back again for another episode. I'll be your host this week, Ali. You can follow me on X at FF Dynasty Grill. And with me as always, well, not always, but the Regaffer is returning this week. So Kev, you can follow on X at the Dynasty Mind. Kev, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
Doing absolutely fantastic. Everything's run smoothly pre-show. We've got a fantastic one lined up. Look, I've not been here the last 3 weeks. I think you and Mags have done a fantastic job sort of wrapping up rookie drafts and then kicking us off into startup season. I think it's going to be really useful, selfishly for me, because I'm going to be in some startups very soon. But also it's going to be great to share some strategy about how we approach the drafts from certain spots. So great show to come back for. And I can't wait to get into it. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, doing really good. Thank you, Kev. Today it's gone all very smoothly, preparation for the show tonight. And yes, it's just really good to have you back, Kev. It's been a long 2 or 3 weeks without you, but hopefully we've done a pretty good job. It's been a really good rounding off the rookies. And as you mentioned, we've kicking off our sort of Dynasty Startup series last week where we're picking from the 1 spot and the 12 spot and just talking behind the strategy, the theory behind, what we're aiming to do. And then tonight we're going to be slightly closer together. So pick 3, pick 10. And I think without further ado, trying to think of NFL news this week. There's not been an absolute ton. It's been pretty funny seeing some sort of hype videos with the rookies, the OTAs starting up. You're going to get an absolute ton of them in the next few weeks. So look out for them and get hyped for a rookie making a nice catch. So we'll go straight to our sleeper board. So as I mentioned, Kev's got pick 3. I've got pick 10. Dynasty Startup. The teams are as follows. There's 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receiver, tight end, 2 flex spots, and then that super flex spot as well. So we're going to kick it off, see how far we get. I think we managed about 11 or 12 rounds last week. We'll start the draft off now. Kev at the 103 spot. I want to sort of get your theory behind what you're aiming to do with that 103 spot. Is it going to be just grab one of the elite quarterbacks, or are you going to surprise me?
No, I think like whatever draft you're in, superflex wise, the biggest decision you've got is how you approach QB. I think that's got to be the number one thing on your mind, whether you're early on or late on. I'm always thinking, if I go a certain way, how can I ensure that I'm going to be covered at quarterback? Because we know that when you get into your leagues, most leagues you're having to overpay for QB. I think as well, this is the cheapest spot to get your elite QB and sort of set yourself up for years. There has been startups I've done where I faded QB and end up winning a ship in year 1 with some sort of a patched up quarterback room. But it's so hard to consistently compete without having elite cornerstone assets at QB. So I think from the 3 spot, it's perfect for me to attack QB. And that will be the plan straight away. I mean, it's the way the draft's gone to begin, slightly different to what I would expect with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson going 1 and 2. It makes the decision really easy for me. I think the guy in 4 is probably having a great time as well with this. But I think looking at the board, it's going to be down to Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. I think some people have them in the same tier. I'm not going to say I'm 100% there. I think Josh Allen's done enough to put himself in a tier of his own. So on that basis, I'm taking Josh Allen at QB. I think it's too early for wide receiver at this stage. And it's going to be an asset that's, you don't see many trades with these type of assets because they're that valuable and they're that important to your rosters. So
you're picking Josh Allen, which would have been my pick as well, Kev. 100%. He's my 101 in Dynasty. But is there any concerns from you? Obviously, I mean, he lost Stephon Diggs is probably the biggest departure. I mean, really, they lost him sort of halfway through the season when they changed offensive coordinator and they really didn't feature him much in the offense going forward. But they've obviously replaced him with Keon Coleman, someone that I wasn't massively high on pre-draft. He's obviously I've moved him up my ranking slightly because of that landing spot and the projections. Is there any concerns about the weapons that he's got there in Buffalo, or is it just the fact that he's got that rushing floor? He scored, what is it, an unbelievable amount of touchdowns, rushing touchdowns last year.
Yeah,
14, which is obviously I'd expect that to regress back down to sort of 8, 9, 10 perhaps. But is there any concerns going forward, or do you still see him as such a safe asset for the next sort of 5 years plus?
I think for me personally, like first of all, like the stage of the draft where I was taking him, I'm looking for dual threat because that's giving you the ceiling and the floor, and that's what gives you comfort. The fact that he can have these. I think he had 8 touchdowns this like 3 years on the trot, and then he's had a spike here with 14. So I'm not saying he's getting 14 again, but if he's getting 10 rushing touchdowns, that's mega. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is going to be a big loss. He's a fantastic real life wide receiver, but I think there's some weapons there that may be underappreciated. Guys like Curtis Samuel, who have been massively high on throughout his career, taking a step with a guy like Dalton Kincaid. So I think from passing numbers, maybe it will regress a little bit, but I think while he's got that rushing floor and that rushing ceiling, there's no concern to me, especially getting him at pick 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'd exactly that, Kev. I think still really safe for me. You look at, I think he's been, I've a quarterback 1 or 2, 3 of the last 4 years or 3 of the last 5 years, and I mean the floor is there as well as the ceiling, and then who knows if Keon Coleman can be that wide receiver 1 on the team. I'm expecting probably Dalton Kincaid to perhaps catch the most passes this year. Obviously, Mags has got him as the tight end 1 overall this year, so look out for that. But yeah, I think he's such a great asset to have, and the ceiling is just massive for Josh Allen. So moving on, this has been a bit of a stinker for me at 10 because strategy-wise, I mean, I can go in hoping that it would have been an elite wide receiver at pick 110. That my top 3 have all gone off the board. So Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. So it's not fallen too kind for me. I'm then looking at tier 2 of my quarterbacks, and the top one's gone in Joe Burrow. So top quarterbacks left on the board is Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson are the 2 highest for me. And I think I could probably get one of those 2, if not someone else also in the same tier, like Justin Herbert, on the next way round in early round 2. So what I'm going to do is grab the last remaining wide receiver in my top tier. So I've got 4 wide receivers in my tier 1. This guy that's been given the absolute bag this offseason. So I'm going to take the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown, as my wide receiver 1 in a format where the last draft that we done with Mags last week, I faded wide receiver, and this is a format where you have to start 3 wide receivers, and it came back to bite me. So I'm going to focus on wide receiver early, so Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then hopefully grab a quarterback on my way round. So come around, typically the 3 quarterbacks that I mentioned have all gone off the board, which is Team 11 is definitely listening because they've taken two studs in Caleb Williams and Anthony Richardson. So I'm pretty jealous of that. But there is someone else that's still in that same tier for me, or there's a couple of quarterbacks that's still in that same tier for me. I mean, there is thoughts about grabbing another wide receiver here and going for wide receiver. It's definitely in my mind because of this being 3rd round reversal. I know that I've only got 8 or 9 picks, and it comes back round to early round 3 for me, and I could grab a quarterback 1 there. But I just think I am going to go for the top quarterback left on my board, and this is someone that I'm really growing high on, and it is worrying me a little bit because it's someone that I was not fading sort of the early last season and had his struggles early in the season, but then finished absolute red hot. So the highest quarterback on my board would be Jordan Love, and it scares me a little bit, but I just think from what he showed last season, the back end of last season, his figures were almost elite, and I think they've got so much confidence in him going forward that Jordan Love is going to be there for a long time. You know, the weapons he's got, so many wide receivers. No perhaps studs, but they like to share the ball around. So I've got no problem with him going forward. So grab him a quarterback one there in Jordan Love. So Kev, you're back on the clock. Talk us behind who you're thinking about here and what is the strategy, because you've gone for that elite quarterback in round one.
I think surprisingly, like I know some of the player selections have been a little bit all over the place so far, but this is how it could look in real life, where you've got sort of 5 QBs to start your draft. You've got sort of the other 4 wide receivers, and then scattering of other QBs, some of the elite running backs, and then still in that really good tier of wide receivers. So I think it's playing out pretty much as I would expect. Now, I did say at the start, QB is what's most important for me in terms of the biggest question. And I think with it being third round reversed on me being at the 3 spot, and I really want to get to sort of top 12 QB ones where possible, unless there's some crazy value, someone slipping like I don't know, like imagine if there was a Breeze Hall here at the 210, that'd definitely tempt me, or a Bijan from a running back point of view. I think wide receiver, because there's guys that are still on the board, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, Malik Neighbors, Chris Olave. You could maybe argue that AJ Brown is in that tier with guys like Harrison, Wilson, Nakua, so that's an option there as well if you want to sort of have a more balanced approach and have Josh Allen and AJ Brown as something to sort of build for. But I'm going to stick to my guns. I think I always prefer to have those solid elite QB assets. And I know that in, let's say, what would be like another 12 picks time, I'm going to be getting to the likes of maybe Tua, Jared Goff, etc., which I think they're fine. But I really want to focus on QB. So I'll go for the guy that's highest on my board at QB, someone that's been underrated for quite a while. He has dealt with injuries, but he's got a brilliant situation for probably the first time I can remember it. So I'm going to take Kyler Murray and see what wide receivers and running backs left when it comes back around.
Paul Pickin is going to love that pick there, Kev. Kyler Murray, quarterback 1. But yeah, I mean, it's a no-brainer. I think that was my start last week. Josh Allen and Kyler Murray from the 1 spot as well, and it was exactly the same theory behind. Got to wait quite a while for my next pick, so what to secure them top 10 potentially. If Kyler Murray starts all season, I don't think there's any way he finishes below quarterback 10 in points this year. So obviously love the pick and puts me back on the clock. So ADP wise, you've got Jonathan Taylor sitting at the top if I wanted to lock in that sort of heavy or stud RB approach. Quarterback wise, Trevor Lawrence, Jaden Daniels, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott is on the board. Sorry. Wide receiver wise, Chris Olave, Drake London, won't be picking him. Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle. So I've filled in 2 of my top positions. So quarterback that I'm happy with, wide receiver that I'm really happy with, one of the elites. So this is a position where I can really pick best player available to me. And I think it's between 2. So I do believe in Chris Olave still. I think he's had two years where he's shown promise, but in terms of the production, it's not fully been there. He's not realised his potential yet. But I do think with the offensive coordinator change that they've got there, I think the Olave's ceiling is definitely looking a lot higher this year. I know it's with Derek Carr. That could change in a year's time, but I think he's in a position to smash. So it's between him and then my next highest quarterback on my list would be probably Jaden Daniels. So this is where I might be taking a chance, where I'll have 2 young quarterbacks for the future. But if I can get that right, and Jaden Daniels is sort of Lamar Jackson light and really hits it off, perhaps he's Anthony Richardson, someone that in just 3 or 4 games showed such promise that he's ranked as a top 8-9 dynasty quarterback already. So it's between those 2 guys. And for this exercise, it would be very close, but I'm going to go for Chris Olave. I just think that next tier of quarterbacks where you've got the likes of Brock Purdy, Jalen Daniels, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence is quite a big one for me. So it doesn't feel good picking a quarterback there where there's several that I could be happy with below. So I just think grab another, for me, a wide receiver one in Dynasty and Olave. Perhaps he's towards the back end of that now. But I do think that with a good season, he can get his way back into sort of the top 8, top 9 conversation. So really happy to start with 2 really good wide receivers and a quarterback that I'm happy with. So swinging around back to you, Kev, back end of round 3. What's your strategy here? Because you've locked in quarterback. Is there a situation where you'd ever go, because I think Mags asked me this, where you'd ever go another quarterback, or would you definitely rule that out right now, no matter who's on the board?
I think, yeah, like sometimes you see it where you have the drafters where they've set the stall early, but they're going to take QB 3, 4, 5 of them, regardless of value. And that's the hope they can bully the market and sell these QBs to the teams. But just remember, if you're taking 5 quarterbacks, there's still 27 other quarterbacks for 11 teams. So everybody's covering the starting positions. You're potentially hindering yourself if you can't sell. Because I'll be honest, I've only done it once, twice, where I've took maybe 4 starters relatively early. And that was a league that ended up being one that didn't really have the need at QB. It was a really strange league because obviously the majority of Superflex leagues, everyone's quarterback hungry. This one was the opposite. I had a bad first year. I ended up being 102 in the draft because I had these 4 QBs when I could have took other positions, and people weren't willing to pay what I wanted them to pay. So personally, I'm not going out my way to bully the market, but if there was a QB that I liked, like for example on this one, for the exercise of sleeper, this is probably the part where they get QB wrong in the mock drafts. Mm-hmm. Like there's no way at the 3-10 there's going to be Dak, Brock Purdy, Tua left on your boards. In my opinion, in real life, from what I've seen in previous years, that won't happen. So if this was real life, I would be tempted to take Dak because for me, he's still like a top 12, top 14 QB. But I'm just going to try and make it more of a real life situation for the audience. So I'm going to avoid QB on this one. I think interesting names to me. I think Devon Achane. He'd be the 7th running back off the board. Like Travis Etienne's gone above him. I don't really get the Achane fade, if I'm honest. Like it was so good when he played. He had 5 top 10 running back games or something. He was electric, over 7 yards carry. He doesn't need a ton of touches to hit well. So I don't quite understand why he's sliding down boards. I've seen him go like running back 9, 10 some places. Like the running back landscape's absolutely terrible. You've got a guy like Jonathon Brooks who's going in, so sometimes being ranked as a running back 10, and as a prospect, he's nowhere near what you would expect in a usual running back 10. So it's a terrible landscape. Achane deserves to be up there. So he's definitely on the board. I think wide receiver wise, you've got guys like Ayuk, Waddle, Adunze, Pittman, Devontae Smith. I think it's a good range to be going for wide receiver, but I like that tier. I like getting later on in that tier. Tight end wise, I think obviously Laporta's gone. It's leaving McBride. It's leaving Bowers, who I've still got in my top 3. So I think it's wise to go wide receiver. Summing everything up, I think wide receiver is wise to go, but I can't wait there. So I'm going to get the tables and I'm going to get Achane.
Like it. So Kev, do you have like a strategy going into startups for running backs? Is it a position? Obviously, they've got a much shorter shelf life than wide receivers. So, I mean, everybody's clambering for wide receivers. Is there a point where in real life drafts, like I think wide receivers have gone off the board fairly early here, but I've seen in real life drafts where they definitely get faded lower than this. Would there be a point where you perhaps go running back early on because there's not that many elite options anymore at the running back position? There's not many teams that are running that every down running back, a lot of them are going running back by committee. Is it just a position where you are still looking to fade? Are you looking to grab one, perhaps be your sort of your anchor running back, and then you grab a low towards the end of the draft? Or what is your strategy at the minute, and has it changed, recently or not?
I think in terms of team build, the way I tend to have it is that running back 2 is my weakest spot on a team. Just if I'm speaking how my teams end up looking in general, it's not a preconceived plan. So I think it can sometimes be good to zig when people zag, or zag when people zig, or vice versa, because it's a different type of build. You are taking on a little bit more risk if you're taking, say, like, I don't know, a Bijan and a Jahmyr Gibbs. Something. Let's just say that's what it ends up being. Like, you're on the 2-3 and then Gibbs falls to 3-3 in this format. That's a unique build, but nobody's touching you at running back. If you get them playing all year, you'll have such a massive advantage at running back. Yes, it is risky. Yes, I do prefer quarterback. But I think having a preset, I'm going to draft this player at this spot, is the wrong way. I think be open with it. But personally, I like having one. And it's probably a risky one to have in A-Chain, but I just feel that he is being faded a little bit too far in my eyes for what he showed in year 1. People talk about rushing numbers coming back, etc. What if he gets more touches? Like, I don't know. It's just one of the things. People are just overhyping their injuries because all running backs get injured, and yeah, he's always been a committee guy, so it shouldn't surprise anyone that he gets half of that field.
Yeah, I mean, exactly the same. A-Chain I think he was my pick in the 4th round last week, so. I mean, I do believe if you go for Devonta Smith, you've just matched all of my first 4 picks, I think, from last week. So, so you've got Devon A-Chan, someone that I absolutely love and agree with that he's been faded unnecessarily. Look at his yards per carry; it's just insane. Obviously, it's going to regress, but I just think that offense is going to continue to be explosive. They've got Raheem Mostert. They've just signed. I think just as a bit of a re-sign for a bit of a reward for him. I can't see his touch has been up there like it was last year. I mean, this guy is 31 years old, I think. And then they've obviously signed drafted Jalen Wright, who's someone that I like as a rookie in the pre-draft process. Probably didn't go off the board as early as I expected. How much is he going to feature year 1? I think if I'm the offensive coordinator, I'm putting it in the hands of Devon A-Chan because he just makes guys miss for fun and just reels off 50-yard runs. So that's someone that I want in my team. And I'm happy to take, as you mentioned, as the running back 7 off the board. So, or running back 8 even. So, Kev, who are you looking at next? Are you going for your wide receiver 1 here?
I think potentially, yeah. There's guys like Waddle, Odunze, Pittman, Devontae Smith. I promise I won't pick Devontae Smith, otherwise people just thinking it's the same show as last time. But I think there's merit in it that 2 different people have picked from similar spots and gone for similar sort of builds. That should sort of tell you how we play and that maybe there is some merit in that, because obviously we're both smart guys, obviously. I think, and I'm not saying do this religiously, but you can sort of gauge what like the upcoming class is going to be at certain positions, like the next year's rookie class 2025. And I know that class is really good at running back, but it's exceptional at wide receiver at the top end. So part of me here wants to maybe not go wide receiver, because I know that I can take a wide receiver late round 1, assuming that we compete next year, and it's going to add a wide receiver of top 25 value to my roster. A name that stands out to me at tight end is Trey McBride. He'd be the second tight end off the board. It'd give me a stack with Kyler Murray. It's potentially a little bit too early for Trey McBride, but I want to see how this build goes. So I'm going to take Trey McBride. I think a lot of his numbers were up there with Laporta's, if not better, in terms of some of the metrics underlying. I think touchdowns can be a little bit fluky year to year. So I'm not saying Laporta's not going to get 10 again, but what if McBride gets 10 for this season? We'll see how that one goes. So I'm going to take Trey McBride. Gives me a stack. It leaves me pretty bare at wide receiver, but it's on the notion that next year's class in 2025 is excellent, and I still like the wide receiver values. I think it's pretty deep this year, so I'm hoping that sleeper's kind to me.
I love the pick, Kev. I think it's realistic that these tight ends fall in this range. Sam Laporta often goes as the tight end 1 in round 3. You've then got Trey McBride, which is my tight end 2. Dalton Kincaid and Brock Bowers. So that's my top 4 tight ends. They've all just gone off the board within the first 4 rounds. So following your pick of Trey McBride, Devonta Smith went off the board, Jalen Waddle, Dalton Kincaid, Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers, and then Tua has gone off the board just before me. So Tua would have been in consideration for my next pick. Obviously, I've got just the one quarterback so far in Jordan Love. I've got 2 stud wide receivers in Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave. So looking top of the board ADP wise, Michael Pittman Jr., I think someone that I really like as someone that can finish as wide receiver 1 again this year with Anthony Richardson, Nico Collins, DJ Moore, and then running back wise gets a little bit murky. You've got Kenneth Walker, who a lot of people still ranking as a running back 1, still really yet to see him break out. Josh Jacobs obviously moved to Green Bay. There's a lot of money involved in the contract, but I think if he doesn't hit it off this year, they can easily move on from him. And then my guy Marshawn Lloyd will pick it up. The next running back is Rashad White, but I mean, I'm not touching Rashad White in round 4 of a startup. I think with Rashad White, I think obviously he finished as the running back 5 last year in PPR formats. I think that he's not going to repeat that again this year. I think Bucky Irvin is going to come in and take some work off him. If he takes receiving work off him, I think that definitely lowers the ceiling for Rashad White. I think he'll have a good year. I think we've upgraded the offensive line, but I mean, there's just no chance I'm touching him here in round 4. So it really is between my second quarterback. So top of the list, this is where quarterbacks are starting to go off the board. So Jared Goff is the highest one on my list. Drake May, JJ McCarthy, and then I'm not touching Bryce Young, Kirk Cousins. These players that I'm not going to touch. But for this instance, I've got the guy next to me is taken 2 quarterbacks in the first 3 picks. So I'm thinking he's probably not going to hit quarterback. And then the guy at the end with pick 12 is already locked in a top quarterback as well. So I'm hoping that one of these guys is going to fall to me. And I'm going to secure another wide receiver because I just think I cannot go for running back here. I'm going to go the highest wide receiver on my board, which would be Michael Pittman Jr. to lock in as my wide receiver 3. Just to think to have Michael Pittman Jr. as my 3rd wide receiver in a dynasty feels really good, just because I've got dynasty teams out there where he's my wide receiver 1 on some teams. So that feels really good. And yeah, going round to round 5 now, early round 5. There's been no quarterbacks go off the board. So following my pick, Nico Collins, Rashad White, Kenneth Walker, and then Kyle Pitts has just gone off the board. So I think in consideration is someone that I picked last week in Mark Andrews. I think he's been disrespected in these drafts for some reason. He fell to tight end 7 last week, and he's someone that I could pick now. I think he's my tight end 5 in Dynasty, and I think he's due a bounce back this year. I think if he didn't get hurt, he was going to have a good year last year. Wide receiver wise, I think I'm set for the time being, just with 3 top wide receivers that I'm really happy with. Running back once again, Josh Jacobs. Then you've got Cook, Pacheco, Swift, Brooks is up there. Again, I'm not going to be touching them right now. I'm going to lock in my quarterback 2, which, I mean, this is, for some people, it's not going to be an exciting pick, but it's it's someone that, it is absolutely beautiful. Going to complete the stack with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff, someone that also got the bag this offseason, that's really locked in there for 2 to 3 seasons again with the Lions, the team that's on the up. And to have him as my quarterback too, which I do in quite a few dynasty leagues, that feels really good to me. So happy to lock in Jared Goff. Following that, Travis Kelce, he's gone above Mark Andrews. Then got JJ McCarthy's got off the board, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, DJ Moore, and Isaiah Pacheco. So Kev, you're back on here on the clock at the 5:10. What's your thinking behind this pick?
Yeah, I think it's about time we get some wide receivers in here, innit? Because we're in round 5, we've not taken any. It's an important position for building in your dynasty team. So looking who's left, Zay Flowers, which if I took him, it'd snipe the guy at 2's. Got Lamar Jackson, Metcalf, someone I'm not really into. T. Higgins, wide range of outcomes. Tank Dell, I think, showed a lot as a rookie, albeit his situation has got a little bit murky with Stephon Diggs there. And then there's other youngsters, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Addison, George Pickens. So I think it is difficult. I was really impressed with Zay Flowers as a rookie. I think playoff-wise, people might be kind of down him because of the fumble, but he had a really great game apart from that. And I think this passing offense has got another gear to go to. I think taking like Tez Walker and re-signing Bateman, that's pretty ideal for Zay Flowers. You know, it's got enough there to sort of take some of the pressure off him, but he's still going to be the number 1, number 2 target in this offense. People will always be scared of Lamar Jackson as a passer, and as a deep thrower, he has got room to grow. But I just feel Zay Flowers is going into year 2. He's someone that I was impressed with, and I'm not too scared about taking him as my wide receiver 1, because I think with this sort of build, it's going to be lots of sort of wide receiver 2 types in Dynasty, or players that can get to that level. I'm not expecting Zay Flowers to have a wide receiver 1 season in his career. I'm just thinking from wide receivers, if I can be solid enough there, because I've got the elite QBs and I've got like potential weekly game breakers in A-Chain and McBride at their positions, let's go for Zay Flowers and start building that wide receiver room.
You've also, I was going to say you've destroyed Team 2 for not being able to have that stack with Zay Flowers, but then he picks Mark Andrews to team with Lamar Jackson. So nice move from Team 2. Then 3 wide receivers has gone off the board: DK Metcalf, Tank Dell, and T. Higgins. So any of them guys would have been in consideration for this next pick, Kev?
Not Metcalf. Not Metcalf. No, he's a bit further down the ball for me. I think, both those guys, Dell and Higgins, are interesting. So with what's left, looking at players like Xavier Worthy, Addison, Pickens, Debo, Rashee Rice, there's JSN a little bit lower there. So I think looking at the sort of build of my team at this stage, it is quite a young team, and that's not traditionally where I go. Like, you know, I'm an older guy and I like the veterans. I think veteran values continue to occur in dynasty leagues. I think people play on 2 wide windows, in my opinion, thinking 3 years. I think it should always be this season, next season. So veterans do tend to be values, but the way this board's falling, it just so happens that it's the youngsters that my team is built around. So I can kind of go any position here. I'm not going to try and build a team of like the class of 92 from Man United, for example. I'm not going to try and build a team of these young studs to be together for years and dominate. I think the board is open. I'm going to focus on wide receiver. Rashee Rice is really interesting for me. I think he is going to get a suspension, you would think, with what's gone on. But we saw last season, he was used as a big slot and he was fantastic. I think having guys like Worthy and Brown on the outside is good for him, opening it up underneath. So he's one that catches my eye. I think George Pickens is another one. But he's a little bit like DK Metcalf in that sense that he's It makes these highlight grabs. He could easily have one of these seasons where he has 10, 12 touchdowns and lots of highlight plays and rises in rankings like DK did. So it's tricky. Guys like Addison and Worthy, I think they're more twos. I'm going to take a punt. He might last a little bit longer, but I'm going to go for Rashie Rice. Someone that I've seen him sold in leagues for absolute dirt cheap because there's that worry of suspension. But I still see him as the one in KC behind Travis Kelce. Ahead of Travis Kelce, I would say, at wide receiver spot now. And yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he slid in drafts, but I'm just going to play for my board and take Rashie Rice.
Kev loves a bad boy.
Oh, yes.
But we did on last week's show, Mags did famously say that Kelce is now washed, even though he's displaying a Kelce jersey behind him, which is fantastic. But I asked Mags the same question last week, Kev. So is there a point in the draft where you sort of take a step back and just have a look at the makeup of your team? As you mentioned, you started with a young core there. Would that make a difference to how the rest of your draft shapes up? And is there a point where you look at your team? Is it, say, 4 picks, 5 picks, 6 picks, and just say, right, this is where we go and this is what we need to do?
I think personally, I'm always trying to win. There is occasions where you can be in drafts and you can trade back and acquire future first and do the productive struggle, as they call it, and it's losing the first couple of years to build an absolute powerhouse in, say, year 2, year 3, where you've got multiple firsts, you've got multiple young assets, and I've seen that work massively for teams. But I'm also seeing leagues fold after 1 or 2 seasons, so just be careful if you're in them sort of leagues. Of course, it's great to have the best team in year 3, but the league might be over. You might just paid your dues and lost your money. So I'm always trying to win. I think you've got to be smart of it week 4, week 5 to understand, is this actually a contender, or is this going to be something where I need to get out and have another shot at it next year and not be. It's always important to be the first to make the move in the market when you're deciding to rebuild or stay on course as such. So I think you've always got to be looking every round of your draft to see, like, if you're building a team full of like McCaffrey, Kelce, win now guys, it's 100% got to be that season, because basically if you're playing it for next season, you've got guys that could be retiring, thinking of Kelce. But even in those instances, you can still get out. You're just gonna put yourself back maybe a little bit longer. So you can sell them in season at an okay price.
Yeah.
But ideally, if you take them in your startup, you want to be a definite contender. It gives you less flexibility than a team like this that's young and can go multiple ways. You can either pull it back and have plenty to spare, or you can sort of make subtle moves to really push in.
Yeah, I totally agree, Kev. I think for me now, this is the time where I've finished my rookie drafts, and hopefully people have not been drafting purely with need in mind in them rookie drafts. They've drafted best player available. And now's the time to really look at your team to assess where you are heading into the new season. Obviously, a lot can still change. But this is where I like to try and buy those veterans like the Devontae Adams, someone that people just don't want on their roster because they're looking at their quarterback position in Las Vegas, thinking that it's pretty disgusting. And yeah, if you're not a true contender, then you desperately want to try and move off these people. So now I think it's the absolute cheapest time to buy veterans, because as soon as they start, everyone's like, oh yeah, Devontae Adams, he's 30 years old, but he's still really, really good and can help me. And I think the price with that goes up. So that is a strategy that I'm looking at right now in Dynasty. Definitely not the right time to sell, but it is the right time to buy, in my opinion, especially if you can offer up 25 or 26 rookie picks. You're not going to massively miss them right now if you're going all in. So this is the point where I've sort of secured 3 really good wide receivers, and then I'm looking at value wise. So is there any that have fallen to me that are tempting where I've not got, like you, Kev, I've not got Josh Allen, I've not got one of the elite quarterbacks. I've got the tier down. So I need to try and make up that advantage with wide receivers in this format. So I've got 3 that I really like. Someone like a George Pickens that we mentioned, he may not be able to have that stud RB1 role. I don't think it's in him to sort of have that. And although he should be the wide receiver 1 this year with Deontay Johnson leaving. But if I was to have him as my wide receiver 4, that feels really good where I don't need to bank on his production week in, week out. And then I'm sure he's going to have big games and he's going to have sort of smaller games that can really push me over the edge. So he's definitely in consideration here. Tight end wise would be sort of the next position I'm looking at. TJ Hawkinson is, he's questionable at the minute just with an injury. I think with the quarterback, JJ McCarthy, like him as a prospect, but might take some time to get going. I think TJ Hawkinson, I think there's a lot of mouths to feed, and obviously Justin Jefferson will be number 1. Arguably Jordan Addison number 2, and you've got Aaron Jones coming in there, pass catch running back. So, yeah, TJ Hawkinson's definitely in consideration. Top 6, 7 dynasty tight end for me to lock that in. But there's a running back that has already been mentioned on this show in Jonathon Brooks that is Kev handing his head in his hands. This will be going off as the RB15 off the board, which to me I'm happy with paying that sort of price. I think it was early when you picked Devon Achane and the running backs that fell after him. I think that was too early for him. But at this point, if I can lean on him as my running back 1, we know he's going to start the season injured. But I think there's a bit of safety and insulation with his value. So I think if he hits it off early or this season, I think then he's locked in as a top 7, 8, 9 running back in Dynasty going forward. So I'm happy to take him now just because after Jonathon Brooks, there's a tier break for me in Dynasty. So I'm going to lock him in as my running back 1.
I think as well, it's worth noting to people that if you're ever struggling to gauge value, work it back to your rookie drafts, especially if it's rookies. Think where would I have took Jonathon Brooks? 110 maybe. Yeah. What wide receivers are on the board? Devontae Adams, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Are they worth the 110 in this year's draft class? Yep. It's probably about the right range, isn't it? It might be a little bit too rich, but I do think if you work it back that way, then it's a fair value. Whereas if you say you're looking at Jonathon Brooks in round 4, where it's or round 5, where it's near DJ Moore or Zay Flowers or someone like that, that helps you sort of understand that this rookie actually is overvalued at this point. It's another way to look at things.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and it's in the right range because you look at George Pickens that went off the board afterwards. He's probably worth a late first round pick. I probably would have been happy paying that in a dynasty league. Yeah. Jackson Smith-Njigba obviously didn't have a massive year 1, but he was being taken off the board the 105, 106, 107, perhaps in rookie drafts last year. So he's probably slipped back to a late first round pick. So, I mean, looking at my next pick here, I can't believe Team 11 have done that to me. They've taken Lad McConkey, the 1 pick before me, which is absolute just insanity. Cannot believe that. So I have to move on from that massive disappointment and think about my next pick. So I mentioned TJ Hawkinson would have been in consideration for my last pick. He's definitely in consideration here. We're into round 7 and TJ Hawkinson is still there. So that's probably someone that I'm probably going to pick here. It's wide receiver wise is quite interesting. I'm not going to touch running backs. I'm not going to touch my quarterback 3 just yet. But the likes of Devontae Adams, Jaden Reed is definitely in consideration here. Really like Reed. Mike Evans, obviously, for him to be wide receiver 4 on a dynasty team is exactly where you want him to be. I think you've got 2 more good years of Mike Evans being in the league, and that is really tempting to have Mike Evans as my wide receiver 4. It's between Mike Evans, Jaden Reed, TJ Hawkinson, and I am going to select. It might surprise you here, Kev, but I'm going to lock in the tight end 1, TJ Hawkinson, which I feel okay about. He's top 7 for me in terms of dynasty rankings. You look at his on-field performance when he's been healthy. He's a top 5 tight end. So to get him this late with all these tight ends already gone off the board, that's quite satisfying for me. And following my pick, Joe Mixon went off the board, Derrick Henry, Keon Coleman, Javonte Williams, Devontae Adams, and Ramondre Stevenson. So, Kev, you're back up at the 7-10. Is it really just a case of best player available now, or are you still sort of earmarking one position?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit light at wide receiver still. Obviously, just those 2 guys, and Rashee Rice is going to be suspended, you'd think. I guess just going back to your team as well, your last 2 picks, Brooks and Hawkinson, both guys that might have slow starts to season, so they correlate well with each other. Yep. So if you're thinking, actually, my running back 1 might not really kick in until the end of the season or start of next season, picking someone like Hawkinson makes sense. Like, if you had like a win now team, let's say you'd started all your veterans and then you pick Jonathon Brooks as your running back 1, it kind of doesn't fit with what you're going for. So I know you did it on purpose, Ali. So we'll move on from your team to mine. But yeah, I think wide receivers appealing. Guys like you mentioned, Reed, Evans, Cup, really interesting. Running back wise, I do like Alvin Kamara still. I think he's a massive value. I think the way this draft's gone, more running backs have gone off it than I think will do in a real life setting. I think a lot of teams will take wide receiver early, fade running back, focus on quarterbacks as well early. That's what you'll tend to find this off season. So it might be a little bit too early for Alvin Kamara in this sense, but then you look about who's going behind him, and there's not a lot that I'm massively liking there. So I am going to go wide receiver. As I said before, I think the board's open as to which route I go. So I'm going to take Jaden Reed. Again, it's not on purpose that I've gone young wide receiver. I think Mike Evans was well in play. I think Cooper Kupp was well in play as well. But yeah, there's a lot of ambiguity in Green Bay. Dontavian Wicks seems to be a name that's hyped up massively for a wide receiver for his team. So look, I appreciate. I'm not going to slag Dontavian Wicks too much, but I mean, come on, it's a muddy situation. There's going to be winners and losers, and he probably is a winner eventually because he's the cheapest. But let's take the gold jacket off him.
So I'll just run down the names. Cooper Kupp went off the board next. Mike Evans, David Montgomery, and Terry McLaurin. So Kev, you're next up again at the 8-3. You've got 2 quarterbacks. You've got your 1 running back in Devon Achane. Trey McBride locked in, and you've then got 3 wide receivers: Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed. So what's your thoughts behind your pick early round 8? Is it still just you're hammering best player available now?
Yeah, like I think with having Rashee Rice, I'm going to be weak at wide receiver, so I think that's got to be the first thing I'm considering. Like some of the guys on here, Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk. I still like Keenan Allen. I like Deontay Johnson as well, who's a little bit lower down in the pecking order, but I think he's due for a bounce back. If you're any sort of a believer in Bryce Young, which I'm not, then I think Deontay Johnson's primed to kick it back. So Alvin Kamara's still there. Pretty interesting, but I'm just going to roll the dice at running back and see what's potentially coming back to me when we get to round 9. So yeah, wide receivers, age isn't an issue. I think I'm going to go for Amari Cooper. Again, he's top of the board. He's someone that's, he's knocking on mock 29-30, but I just feel that he's got that boom that he can have wide receiver 1 weeks consistently. So Amari Cooper. I've gone wide receivers the last 4 picks. That's probably how I wanted it to go. There's not been any major values that have come my way, so stuck to the script.
You've just got to rely on Deshaun Watson getting injured again, so someone can come in and be a proper quarterback to
Jameis Winston.
Jameis Winston. How perfect would that be to unlock Amari Cooper for another good year? I have Amari Cooper on so many dynasty teams just because of the fact that, people don't want him, but I think he's still got the ability to touch sort of wide receiver 2 numbers. He has stretches in seasons where he has 3 or 4 games that you think, wow, he's still really good wide receiver. And then he can disappear as well. So to have him as wide receiver 4 feels right. So after your pick of Amari Cooper, Alvin Kamara, Jake Ferguson, a tight end that I really like, Bryce Young, Kirk Cousins, Bo Nix. Feels a little, perhaps early for him, but teammate have obviously decided that they're going for rookie tight ends and JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, and then the pick before me is Najee Harris. So my team currently no, definitely not sniped him me because I much prefer his teammate. I think he's in for a good year. But looking at my team, Jordan Love, Jared Goff at quarterback. I've got Jonathan Brooks as my running back 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman as my wide receivers, and TJ Hawkinson as my tight end. So again, this is a situation where I'm not forced to go for any position just because, similarly to you, Kev, locked in the top running back, top tight end. But then you mentioned that Jonathan Brooks is not going to be there probably for the start of the season, or perhaps will be limited. So it does tend me now to at least start having a real serious look at running back situation and see who's on the board. I mean, ADP wise, the top names are Trey Benson. I mean, going with sort of a younger build, especially for my last 2 picks where they might not be there to start the season, Trey Benson is at least interesting because I do think, come 2025, he could easily be the Cardinals running back 1 on a team that is, could be potentially explosive. You think got the likes of Tony Pollard, Zamir White. We're not quite sure what that's going to look like this year. Tajay Spears in that same team with Tony Pollard. Aaron Jones, see, moving on to Minnesota. Perhaps he's got 1 more decent season left. And then it comes down to Jalen Warren, Blake Corum, James Conner, Brian Robinson. So looking at wide receiver, there is someone there that I actually took as my wide receiver 2 last week in Christian Kirk. Was at how bad it fell for me. So he would definitely be in consideration here as my wide receiver 4. And I think that's a position that I'm going to go in because I think forever undervalued, a bit like an Amari Cooper. I think Christian Kirk is still in line to get an absolute ton of targets this year. I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is someone that I do really like, but perhaps he's more for the future. He's going to be more hit or miss. And Christian Kirk is going to bring points, every single week. And he just sneakily racks up the points, and you think, Christ, how did he finish? Where was he last season? Last season was injured. The season before, wide receiver 11. So
brilliant.
Yeah. So next off the board, Trey Benson, Baker Mayfield, Zamir White, Chris Godwin. So we're into round 9. Again, team 11. They just know how to snipe me with Chris Godwin. Would have been someone that I would have been in consideration for here. But I think I'm going to lock in my running back 2 here. Just as you mentioned, my running back 2 is forever my weakest position on my teams, just because everybody likes the wide receivers. They seem to be the currency, the trade is sort of as gold right now. Tight end wise, there's interesting names like George Kittle, David Njoku, Evan Ingram. David Njoku is, absolute stud. But I'm going to lock in. I mean, in a real life situation, I'd probably be locking in my quarterback 3 here. I think I don't like to get to round 10 and I've not taken my third quarterback. And I feel like in real life situations, you'd need to do that. In this exercise, probably don't need to do that. But you got Deshaun Watson, who's, I mean, the Browns must be feeling absolutely terrible about that contract that they gave him, because if he doesn't show up this year, I think they're still locked in for another 2 years after this, which is just horrendous. Will Levis would be in serious consideration as my quarterback 3, just because I think they've built that offense for him to succeed this year, and hopefully he can take that next step. But and then when you weigh it up, I think value-wise, quarterbacks against running backs, the likes of Will Levis to this level of running back, I think there's no comparison. So really, I should probably play the game true and lock in my third quarterback. So that's what I'm going to do here, and just see who falls to me at running back 2. It's going to be Will Levis, just because I think he's someone that, given his weapons that he's got to play with this year, I think the ceiling is potentially there. And if he hits it off, then he's someone that I can either trade away, or I've got a really nice asset there. Or if he fails, so be it. He's my quarterback 3. I'm not relying on him. So that's the type of sort of swing I like to take at quarterback 3. So next off the board, Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle, Deshaun Watson, David Njoku, Tony Pollard, and then Aaron Jones. So Kev, you're back up the 9-10. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think we know real life QB is going to go a little bit earlier than this, but I think with my build that I've got, where I've took Allen and then Kyler Murray, if I don't get a starting QB3, I'm not going to be overly precious, because if I'm having to stick them in my lineup, something's gone wrong, which is going to majorly affect my team if one of those guys at the top isn't starting. So I think for me, it's like a shoot for the moon situation. Like in this sort of build for my QB3, I'm looking at names like, I'm thinking of like big blow potential, and obviously I'm a loyal guy. I'm a sucker for punishment. I love a Justin Fields type guy, because I think he's going to get a chance. I think someone like Daniel Jones is an interesting player as well, because everyone's assuming he's on a 1-year deal and he's basically out of town after that. A guy that was considered top 15 QB 12 months ago after a fantastic QB1 season. And he's got Malik Neighbors now, his best ever weapon. So I think he'd be interesting for my sort of build that I've got going on. Other than that, there's not a lot. I could take just a random QB3 like a Matt Stafford or something, or an Aaron Rodgers, just to keep me tying along. Other position wise, I need a running back 2. You've got Spears, Warren, Chubb, interesting, James Conner. But wide receivers also really interesting for me. I've got the 4, but one of them is Rashee Rice. Players that I like that are left: Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson. So it's going to be down to, I think I named a couple of wide receivers that I really like, but I'm going to take quarterback. Generally, I will play for upside and go for someone like Fields a couple of rounds later, but in a real life scenario where quarterback's flying off the board, I want to be safe and secure. This is a team that I think can win now. I don't want to be falling short on bye weeks, sort of scrambling for wasting all my fab on a Jake Browning or something like that. So give me Matthew Stafford. I think he's got tremendous upside week to week. I think Aaron Rodgers will be a chance of being selected there as well. But give me Stafford with Kupp and Nakua.
Love it, Kev. So following your pick, AD Mitchell, Evan Ingram, Tajay Spears, and Jalen Warren. So it puts you back at 10-3. When would you start looking for your second tight end, would that be really deep in the draft? Would it depend on when you took your first tight end? Obviously, you've locked up Trey McBride. So is it a position where you just don't look at whatsoever? Would you perhaps, if someone fell to you, perhaps a TJ Hawkinson or someone that, perhaps you fell another couple of rounds, would you try and scoop up value there, or would it just be you've got your stud, your starter, you're not thinking about tight end in the flex positions? Or would it just come down to format, whether it was tight end premium or not?
Yeah, format plays a big difference. Like if it's one tight end premium, like getting your 2 points per reception as such, that does factor in and makes it interesting. But I just feel if I've made a pick on tight end 2, like I'm only needing bye weeks, regardless of matchup, he's going to be in the lineup. So if I'm taking tight end 23, 24, that's probably where I'm at. I'm probably taking 2 more, and they're going to be like on that tight end 2 free cusp, unless there's something outrageous in value. But just remember, if you're sticking a tight end in your flex in non-premium leagues, your ceilings are automatically lower. You're going to struggle to win a championship against a powerhouse with, I don't know, let's see what tight ends are here. With a Cole Kmet in your flex, for example. It's not going to happen. So I think I'm going to be sticking. Well, I'm actually going back to the wide receivers and Keenan Allen and Calvin Ridley on the board there, but I mentioned this guy last time around, Deontay Johnson, someone that's 27 years old. I think there's questions at QB, but I think it's giving me sort of that middle balance. I've got young wide receivers. I've got Amari Cooper. Let's take Deontay Johnson, someone sort of in the middle. It just, because when you're building teams, I like to have like a conveyor belt. Like it doesn't always have to be full of youngsters or full of old guys. I just like it so that I'm not having to make tons of decisions every year at like one position. So I'll take Deontay Johnson. That's my lineup set, apart from running back 2, which is what I said at the start is likely to happen.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be the same for me. It's going to be one running back and done in this format. So you took Deontay Johnson, then Calvin Ridley, Nick Chubb, Xavier Legette, Hollywood Brown, interesting, Keenan Allen, Christian Watson. So I'm back with my final pick. I've got 4 wide receivers that I feel really good about. 2 quarterbacks, or 3 quarterbacks now that I feel good about. 1 tight end that I feel good about, and then looking here, it's just going to be a case of best player available. Running back wise, I mean, Blake Corum, James Conner, Austin Eckler, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary. I mean, these are guys that have the chance to be the running back 1 on their teams. But I mean, what does it even mean? Running back 2 finish. And again, all of these guys are year to year, perhaps except Blake Corum. And then even then, there's some muddy situation with Kyron Williams there. So, like you, Kev, I'll be going to wide receiver here, and I mean it does start to get a bit, not great. The likes of Jameson Williams, I think, is interesting. Probably not going to be touching him. Jalen Polk, Josh Downs, Troy Franklin, Jerry Jeudy, Jahan Dotson. Romeo Dobbs, perhaps slightly interesting.
We know you love Judy, mate.
Once upon a time, I would be all over Jerry Jeudy and the bounce back. But, I mean, going to Deshaun Watson, it doesn't fill me with much hope with Amari Cooper there as well. So this is, I mean, how ridiculous does this sound? But this is my final pick, back end of round 10, and this seems to be the most difficult pick that I'm going to be making tonight. I mean, if this was real life, I mean, it would be pretty interesting here. With someone like Michael Penix still on the board, because it's someone that it's not going to be helping your team now, not going to be helping your team probably in 2025, but he's almost like you're just stashing away a first round pick. And the second that there's, rumors of Kirk Cousins falling away and Penix is looking good, I mean, his value is just going to rise just because of the weapons that he's got there. But it'd be in consideration. But I mean, again, that's probably ridiculous. So
just think, Ali, though, people say 2026. There's lots of situations where he gets to field before 2026. Think of an injury. Think of Kirk Cousins not making the playoffs with this Falcons team, stuff like that. So, yeah, I think Penix is an interesting guy.
He is interested. And if you look at who's left on the board, I mean, there's nobody here that you would pay a first-round pick for. Perhaps the upside of a Justin Fields if he was the starter in Pittsburgh. But other than that, there's no one that you'd touch with a first-round pick. So Michael Penix is interesting. Looking at wide receivers, it is just a whole host of names where I'd have in a massive list. So yeah, let's bugger it. Let's go Michael Penix, stash him away, and that is going to end my draft. So just recapping the teams. I've got Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Will Levis, and Michael Penix. So I've ended up with 4 quarterbacks in the first 10 rounds, which is pretty insane. It's pretty insane, but I mean, value-wise, the players left on the board were pretty rank. Running back, I've just got the one so far, and Jonathon Brooks. So in the next sort of rounds, I'd have to be hammering running back and hoping that I find one that will see sort of work early on. Wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Chris Olave, Michael Pittman, Christian Kirk. So 4 that I feel really good about starting each week. And then TJ Hawkinson as my tight end. Again, someone that has top 5 upside for me. And I got him at tight end 8, I think it was. So, Kev, recap your team and how you're feeling, how it went.
I think first of all, we'll just keep it on your team. I think the way you've built it, it's giving you options. So you've got these players that 2025, 2026 are really going to come into their own. Jonathon Brooks, TJ Hawkinson will be back fully. Michael Penix. You've also got a build of younger guys who you could potentially move off if you're getting a bit worried. Like, let's say a Will Levis. Let's even say a Jordan Love.
Yep.
Where he is in Dynasty, he deserves to be there. But he's done it for one season. Let's leave open the possibility that there's still potential question marks there. I'm not saying I'm fading Jordan Love or anything like that. I'm absolutely not. But if we're playing probabilities, 80% chance, let's say, he stays there. 20% he might not. He might fade away. We've seen other QBs sort of land in the top 12 after one good season, and then they're off the map for a while. I think probably bad examples, but Carson Wentz was a guy that flew up and then flew down. Baker Mayfield did it for a while. So just certain players that haven't done it for consistently years on years, leave open that possibility. But enough about me praising your team. Because I think you've done a great job and you've left open lots of different strategy with yours. I like my team better than I do my Orkney Bowl team, if I'm being honest. So I've got Josh Allen and Kyler Murray as my starting QBs, Hurley, and then Matt Stafford as the QB3. A-Chain as the only running back I've taken. Wide receivers, I've got Zay Flowers, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson. So I think there's a blend there of win now. There's a blend of for the future. And then Trey McBride, a guy that I think he deserves to be at minimum top 3 in Dynasty. I've got him in a tier with Laporta. The market doesn't see it that way. They see Laporta absolutely Mount Everest, and nobody's near him. So, yeah, I'm really happy with how that's gone. I've tried not to cheat too much, but it's been a really fun exercise.
Yeah, no, I love it, Kev. I think you're spot on with Trey McBride. I've got 4 tight ends as in my top tier. Him being my tight end too. I don't get the people that see Marvin Harrison Jr. coming in and just think that he's going to get all the targets and Trey McBride's going to fall down the pecking list. But just look who else is there. There's just some names there. The likes of Michael Wilson. I mean, is he really going to get 120 targets? It's not going to happen. So Trey McBride is going to be at worst the second target on the offense, and he's just going to feast and put together and make that second step from what he was putting down on the back end of last year. So love that. I also love the fact that you took a chance with Rashee Rice, because the ceiling's there from what we saw last season when he was getting more targets than Travis Kelce, not counting the playoffs. There is a risk that he has a suspension, but you've now found yourself later on in the draft some starting wide receivers in Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson, and then the likes of Jaden Reed, who everybody loves Jaden Reed. And I think if he comes out this year and becomes that wide receiver one on that team, he can take the next step and be sort of a top 16, 17, 18 wide receiver in Dynasty, because people already love him and it's a bit of a muddy situation. If he then becomes that one, people are going to fly him up their board. So really like where you're at. You're competitive. I think you'll still be competitive when Rashee Rice comes back from his suspension. So love the makeup of your team, Kev. And with that brings that brings us to the end of tonight's show, where we have completed the second Dynasty Startup Mock. We've got another one to come, so we're picking from spots 3 and 10 tonight. We're going to be picking from spots 5 and 8 next week. So that will be interesting to see us a little bit closer together. Certainly different strategies going into that show. So listen out for that. And with that, thank you. So thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us and subscribe on X and YouTube at Fantasy Wildcard and at Wildcard Dynasty. And join us for our show every single Wednesday of the off season. So thank you once again. Have a good one, and we'll see you again soon.
When you have the wild card, you have the power to change the game.